Welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be covering recent news involving the Tennessee Volunteers football program. A few years ago, Tennessee was exposed for having, well, I shouldn't say that. They were discovered to have violated recruiting rules and regulations by the NCAA, which included 18 level 1 recruiting violations, which is the highest level of violations towards NCAA rules and recruiting because they were giving impermissible benefits and just um, impermissible rewards for recruits to come and visit their programs and whatnot. And it's what allowed them to fire their former head coach, Jeremy Pruitt, with cause and to avoid a massive buyout they would have had to pay him at the time. So here's this article by Chris Lowe and Pete Thamel of ESPN. Volunteers avoid bowl ban as NCAA finds over 200 violations. The Tennessee football program avoided a bowl ban, but was fined more than $8 million by the NCAA Division I Committee on Infractions, which announced its punishment for the Volunteers on Friday after finding more than 200 individual infractions committed by the school. Among the penalties handed down, Tennessee has been placed on a 5 years probation, which was given an $8 million fine, and among other financial penalties, and will see a total reduction of 28 scholarships. And for a program that just came off an 11-2 year, having a reduction of 28 scholarships could be pretty debilitating for their plans on developing players for their freshman and sophomore and recruiting as well. The school is credited for its self-imposed 16-year scholarship reduction over the past two seasons. The $8 million fine, which the NCAA was equivalent to the financial impact of the school would have faced if it missed the postseason during the 2023 and 24 seasons, is believed to be the largest ever levied in an infractions case. It could also signal a trend towards stiffer financial fines in future infraction cases. Uh, the panel encouraged a challenging set of circumstances related to the prescribing penalties in this case. The Infractions Committee said in its decision, the panel urges the Infractions Process Committee and the membership to clearly define its philosophy regarding penalties, which extend beyond postseason bans, and memorialize that philosophy in an updated set of penalty guidelines. Tennessee had been charged with 18 level 1 violations, as you can see here, the most severe in NCAA rule structure. There you go in July 2022, stemming from the tenure of former coach Jeremy Pruitt, who is now a defensive assistant coach for the New York Giants. Included more than 200 infractions where the charges of 60,000 in impermissible benefits, and both Pruitt and his wife Casey making cash payments to the players' families. Pruitt received a 6-year show cause order and will be suspended for the first full season if he were to be rehired by an NCAA school. Um, Three other former staffer members were also given show cause orders. Tennessee's coming off an 11-2 season under coach Josh Heupel, the program's first season since 2007 with double-digit wins. The lack of a bowl ban continues a recent trend in NCAA cases as the organization has gone away from punishments that are punitive toward current players, especially those who weren't around when the violations occurred, which kind of makes sense. Tennessee was not charged with a lack of institutional control a year ago when the charges were announced, which lessened the potential scope of penalties, as did a series of self-imposed sanctions in anticipation of the NCAA ruling, which kind of explains why the NCAA didn't ban them, because not only did they self-impose their own punishment, not only did they punish themselves, but they were helpful in the NCAA investigating. They were very cooperative. Right here is the NCAA.com releasing their own article citing hundreds of violations occurred in Tennessee football program over the past 3 seasons. Uh, the majority, and here where it says under impermissible paid visits, the majority of violations in this case relate to a paid unofficial visit scheme that was used in a consistent manner by the football program over the course of 2 years. In total, the scheme involved 29 prospects, 39 members of the prospects' families, and then enrolled uh, and 10 then enrolled student athletes, 3 family members of then enrolled student athletes, 9 individuals with a prospect, meaning like a high school coach or a non-scholastic coach, 3 boosters. The scheme involved at least a dozen members of the football staff, and the resulting violations included at least 110 impermissible hotel nights, 180 impermissible meals, 72 instances of providing impermissible entertainment of other benefits, 41 impermissible recruiting contacts, 37 instances of providing impermissible game day parking, and 14 times in which gear was impermissibly provided to prospects. Before the prospect visit, the former recruiter director worked with an assistant coach who was the prospect's primary recruiter and arranged hotel rooms, which would then be paid for in cash before the prospect's arrival. Uh, the recruiting staff also regularly called ahead of time to restaurants and entertainment venues and asked them to hold the bill for a prospect's visit. After the prospect left, a football staff member would stop by to pay the bill in cash. During the committee on infraction hearing, the former recruiting director acknowledged that the funding for these visits was frequently provided by a former assistant coach and a former director of player personnel. Here it is on direct payments to prospect students and athletes. In addition to impermissible pay visits, 2 prospects who later enrolled as student athletes received cash payments from the former head coach and his wife, as said before. During Prospect One's recruitment, the former head coach and his wife provided the prospect's mother with $6,000 in cash intended to be a down payment on a new car for her. After the prospect signed the national letter of intent and enrolled at UT, the head coach's wife continued to provide his mother with $500 in cash monthly for car payments on at least 25 occasions. The head coach's wife also introduced her to a real estate agent who was a Tennessee booster to assist her with a rental home in the Knoxville area. When the student athlete's mother signed her lease, $1,550 was due at the signing, and the head coach's wife provided her with $1,600 in cash to pay the deposit. The head coach's wife also arranged for another $1,600 payment to be made by the prospect's mother by an assistant coach, one when she moved into rental property later that month. Prospect 2 enrolled at Tennessee, accompanied by his mother and sister when he moved in. During this trip, his mother informed the head coach that she needed a medical procedure but could not pay for it due to outstanding medical debt. During her departure from Knoxville, the head coach expanded her envelope. Coach handed her an envelope, with approximately $3,000 in cash, in which the mother used to pay for her medical bills. Records obtained by the school during the investigation indicated that the prospect's mother deposited $5,100 into her bank account only 2 days after the head coach showed a cash withdrawal of a similar amount, $5,000. Additionally, the head coach gave the prospect's mother $300 to pay for gas. Head coach responsibility due to the former head coach's direct involvement in potentially providing impermissible inducements and benefits to prospects, student athletes, and their families. He violated head coach responsibility rules. Additionally, he failed to monitor his staff uh, when at least a dozen members of the football staff committed more than 200 violations of NCAA rules over a 2-year period and did not self-report any of those violations. The head coach that they're referring to is Jeremy Pruitt, obviously. Uh, you know, and this article by the NCAA just details more investigations, more details into their investigation and what they found of the wrongdoing that Tennessee had committed. Penalties in February of 2023, the enforcement staff and several individuals reached an agreement about the violations and penalties. For the remaining parties, the panel weighed the school's exemplary cooperation and classified this case as the level 1 standard for Tennessee, level 1 standard for former assistant coach 3, and level 1 aggravated for the head coach, former director of recruiting, and former assistant director of recruiting. So, as I was saying earlier, Tennessee cooperated with the NCAA. They did not hinder the NCAA's investigation in any way, shape, or form. So I guess the NCAA looked at it as like, okay, since you've been so cooperative and you've assisted us in the investigation, we're not gonna um, dropped the hammer so viciously. Um, Current NCAA rules and penalty guidelines require a 1 or 2 year postseason ban for a level one standard case. However, in January 2022, NCAA members adopted a new constitution that states divisional regulations should ensure, to the greatest extent possible, that penalties imposed for infractions do not punish programs or student athletes not involved in infractions. In April of 2023, the Division I Board of Directors endorsed a set of principles recommended by the Infractions Process Committee that, in part, emphasized, incentivizing cooperation by schools by rewarding those that demonstrate exemplary cooperation and reserving postseason bans for level one cases that lack exemplary cooperation. The committee used Division One membership approved infraction penalty guidelines to prescribe the following penalties in addition to the fine: 5 years of probation, a reduction in football scholarships by a total of 28 during the term of probation, including at least 2 scholarships each year. Tennessee previously self-imposed and is credited with 16 scholarship reductions from 2021 to 2022 and 2022 and 2000 through 2023 academic years. A reduction in official visits by a total of 36 during the term probation, including a reduction of at least 4 per year. Excuse me. Tennessee self-imposed and is credited with a reduction of 7 official visits from the 2021 through 22 academic year, and the school can be credited with an additional reductions in visits from the 2023 through to 2020 through 22 through 23 academic year. If they were imposed in connection with regulation homes, Tennessee previously self-imposed and is credited with a 6 week reduction in 2021 and 2 weeks during 2022, and the school can be accredited for any additional reductions imposed for regular season home games during the 2022 through 2023 academic year. And there's just more. Here's more of what Tennessee self-imposed themselves with and what they're getting punished with during the 2023 through 24 academic year. Tennessee shall forego the purchase of advertising with the all football postseason broadcast in which it is a participant. Each year, the probation term, an external group shall conduct a new compliance review of the football program with an emphasis on recruiting operations. Each year of the probation term, Tennessee shall host an annual mandatory compliance seminar with an emphasis on recruiting for all football staff, coaches, part-time and volunteer staffs included. Staff from either the NCAA National Office or the Southeastern Conference Office will be in attendance. So uh, that's it. That's the news update on Tennessee. They were cheating during the Jeremy Pruitt era, excuse me, and quite frankly, I've seen. I think this. I think they're being a little soft-handed, but they admitted it due to the what they claim exemplary cooperation that Tennessee presented themselves and handled themselves accordingly. So that's probably why the NCAA was not as heavy-handed in their punishment as they would have been for other cases. That and they also, in their minds, don't want to punish players who are coming into Tennessee that had nothing to do with the previous infractions to begin with. Um, but when you say over 200 individual infractions, including 18 level one infractions, which the NCAA says itself is the most flagrant infraction you could have, I think Tennessee should have got a little bit more than what they got. The punishment should have been a little bit stricter. And as for Jeremy Pruitt, you did all this, and you still failed on the football field. This guy had more recruiting violations than he had actual victories at Rocky Top. Not to mention the fact that you also lost to Georgia State in your second year, and you missed the bowl game twice during your tenure there at Tennessee. You went 3-7 in 2020. You went 5-7 in 2018, and you went completely winless against Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and I think you even lost to Vanderbilt in your first year. So you did all this for nothing. Um, yeah, uh, Jeremy Pruitt. is Jeremy Pruitt should, quite frankly, should never, ever, ever be even considered to have a head coaching job in college football again. If you want to have him as an assistant, that's fine. But as a head coach, you did all these violations, and you still couldn't even win 20 games. That's sad. And I know that Tennessee is actually kind of hopeful, is actually kind of glad that they self-reported themselves, so that way they could have gotten rid of you without doing a buyout because you were just god awful as a coach.